supporting our staff within primary care. If you've joined us before, you'll know that we do 10 minutes of talking and then 10 minutes of Q&A. Feel free to turn your camera off. We don't need to see your lovely faces, so you can catch your dinner or whatever else it is that you need. And after recording for 10 minutes, we've got an open Q&A where we're going to stop recording and you'll be able to hopefully feel a little bit more psychologically safe. If you was with us last time, you would have seen Pete Can, the laughter man. Very interesting conversation. If you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend that you go and do that. Lots of information around laughing yoga and how you can use intentional laughter to make you feel just a little bit better in work. So we're going to start recording now. I'm pleased to welcome Joanne Clancy, who is the director of Clandara Limited. Jo has over 26 years experience in learning development across the UK and in international waters, Jo. So for the past 7 years, Jo's worked closely with primary care teams, helping GP partners, practice managers, currently running one of our practice manager programs around workforce challenges to help rebuild and motivate people as confident leaders, really creating workplaces that feel great for everyone. So a huge welcome, Jo. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So today we're talking about lead, motivate, delegate. So the first question I've got for you really is around, from your experience working alongside practice managers, what are the most common challenges that you see they face day to day?
I'd say there's probably two. The heavy workload. They're always crazy busy, feeling like they're on a hamster wheel. So much to do. They talk to me about that all the time. And then the second one is probably dealing with HR issues, because they're really kind, lovely people. Everybody comes to them with their issues. So spending most of their day probably challenging themselves around that.
And it must be difficult with them being a small organisation as well. I think with any small organisation, you don't have teams of people that are specialised in different areas, so I can see that being a huge challenge.
Yeah, especially difficult because they have the GP partners above them who are supposed to be their boss, but they come to them with HR problems, and then they have, somebody on reception coming, and they're probably feeling quite piggy in the middle, I guess, most of the day.
So in terms of that, what strategies have you found most effective from that sort of burnout, considering they've got so many challenges?
Yeah, okay. When I work with practice managers, I firstly talk to them about their workload and how they're managing that. And some of the techniques range from everything that's on a post-it note to a whiteboard to, any range of things. So encourage them really to seek out some IT solutions for managing their workload rather than having tons and tons of lists to do or tons of notebooks with lots of pages where it just seems like it's a never-ending list of stuff. And then once we've done that, it's then working out which jobs do they need to do. So, concentrating really on the important tasks, and those that are less important or less urgent maybe is thinking about a way to delegate those.
I'm just curious in terms of when you say IT, what types of systems? Is it like Outlook maybe, or Trello?
Using their Outlook calendar a bit better. And then one of my practice managers uses Access, Microsoft Access, and he has everything in there, all of his projects. And it's brilliant. I'm not very IT savvy, but he showed it me and it looked really good.
I might have a go at that myself and see if I can manage that. We use Trello in work, and it's one of our managers' favourites, Trish, and it does work. It's useful. It definitely helps people like me who don't write things down and forget things for sure. Well, what do you think then prevents practice managers from delegating?
The big one, I guess, is trust. So who do I trust in order to pass an important piece of work over? And do I trust that it's going to be completed as well as I do? Or is it going to be completed quickly? So maybe I just do it myself. But again, because practice managers are kind and caring people, they often think as well, I don't want to dump my stuff onto somebody else. I feel like I've got a lot to do, and by delegating, I'm just adding to somebody else's workload. So that's a mindset really that I'm trying to encourage them to get out of. Other things they come across are, team members who maybe seem reluctant to take on other tasks, and they have phrases like, it's not in my remit, or it's above my pay grade. So then they feel uncomfortable again delegating that. And they say that some staff just want to come in and do their job and go home. They don't really maybe necessarily want to develop and grow. They're quite happy to just get on and do things and then go home, which all sound like legitimate reasons, but I do tend to challenge them, the practice managers anyway, on exploring that a bit more, and why maybe delegation hasn't worked for them in the past. And I've found really that it's probably their delegation technique that is probably not quite as robust as it ought to be, or maybe they just like to be in control.
Yeah, I think we've all got maybe stories of where we think we've delegated something to somebody and it comes back a totally different, experience or result that we wouldn't necessarily,
Yeah.
have thought about them doing that. So I suppose then what makes, effective delegation, is it really about just letting it go?
Well, in some instances it is. It's about maybe, trusting people and thinking, I can let this go. I don't need to be in control of everything, which, as I say, is a shift in a mindset. But I guess that the big thing is about reducing the mindset from being, I'm dumping this onto someone else, and shifting that to, actually, I'm helping someone else develop and grow. So by passing them a task that maybe they're unfamiliar with, they're helping them to develop in their career, which makes life a bit more interesting for them than doing the same tasks every day. And it also works towards succession planning for the practice, because I'm sure the practice managers want to retire at some point, or they want to go on holiday at some point. So, having that career progression plan in place. So when they do decide that they want to go away or they want to retire, then they've got people in the wings. It's not starting from scratch, having to show them everything.
We were just talking about this earlier, actually. In fact, it's like going away should be therapeutic and relaxing, but as soon as you get back, it's such a challenge to jump straight
Yeah.
back in. If, especially if you haven't maybe got, you delegated, or you don't, things aren't getting picked up while you're off, or certain things like that can really affect you even wanting to go away. I think, so you're
Yeah,
not getting the breaks that you need.
that's
So
it.
do you think then there's like a process that people could follow to make sure that it's effective?
Yeah, there's probably a couple. So I call these the steps and levels of delegation. So, we're all guilty, aren't we, of having a task on our to-do list and saying to somebody in the heat of the moment, Jenny, can you do this for me quickly? Just go over and tidy a shelf, or can you put those books away, or whatever. It's probably something more important than that. But, we do that, don't we? Because we're all busy. But
Yes.
do we really take the time to articulate what exactly is the task that I'm giving to somebody, and having it clear in our own minds about exactly what it is you're asking somebody to do? And then are we assessing that person's skills and ability to do that task?
Yeah.
Maybe they've never done anything like that before, and because it's easy for us, we just think we'll just pass that over, but it might be quite daunting for somebody else. So almost assessing that they have the skill and the ability to do that. I think something really important is explaining the reason why. Why are you asking them to do it, and sell it to them? You're great at doing this type of thing, or you're great at looking after people. So when we have that new starter, will you look after them for me? So leaning into their skills and really selling it to them. And then giving them feedback as well at the end. Often it's just done, isn't it? And then we move on to the next thing. So having that feedback in the end, at the end, and knowing when the end is. So when do you want it doing by? Yeah.
So like to recap then, Joe, it's like the first thing is to make sure that you explained it properly.
Yeah.
Then after that, it's about making sure that they understand why they're doing it, and the kind of strengths around that. And then that feedback kind of evaluation, is again like another important step. And then, within that as well.
Yeah. So even if they have
Um,
even if they've done the task brilliantly or not brilliantly, they need to have some feedback, don't they? Otherwise, they're left wondering about whether, was that what you wanted? And maybe I'm reluctant then to take something else because I just don't know.
And then I think the last question for me is tell me about like the steps and levels of delegation. What does it include?
So the steps are, as I've just said, really about thinking about each of those areas, and then the level is, well, how much of this task am I giving away? Am I giving it all away? Am I saying it's your responsibility now? Or am I asking you to just look into something and to come back to me? Or am I asking you to make a start on it? Or is it all of it? So being clear in your mind about how much of the task you're giving away, and do you want the person to check in with you from time to time to see how they're getting on? Or is it just, no, it's yours?
Thanks so much, Jo. Can you believe that's just been 10 minutes?
No.
We're going to stop. We're going to stop recording there, and then we're going to give people a chance in the Q&As to ask any questions of Jo.